Hey everyone, Kelly Nyberg here with an extra special What's Up Sioux Falls for you this week. January 1st marked the start of Human Trafficking Awareness Month all over the world. I think it's nationwide, worldwide, and it is such an important topic and we wanted to dive into it a little bit more today. So of course we had to call on my friend Becky Rasmussen of Call to Freedom and also survivor Mary, who also works for Call to Freedom here in Sioux Falls. Hello ladies.
Hello. Thanks for having us, Kelly.
Well, thank you. We have a lot to talk about today. And like I said, you know, this interview is going to be however long it needs to be because we really want to shed the light on this issue. Let's start with you, Becky. You've been around for 8 years now, Call to Freedom. You started it by yourself. And now you have 27 employees 8 years later, which is amazing. How did you get started with this? What was the inspiration? Why did you want to start Call to Freedom? And then explain to our viewers what exactly Call to Freedom is.
Sure. Call to Freedom is a anti-human trafficking group that provides supportive services to those that have been victimized by human trafficking. So that's either sex or labor. For me, this is a call. I never woke up one day and said, I'm going to open a anti-human trafficking group. But I knew in my heart, as I built my relationship with the Lord or found my relationship with the Lord, that I was called to something. And so for me, this is a call, and he made that very clear in the last probably, prior to Call to Freedom, 7 years prior to that, on the journey of preparing me for what we're doing today. So Call to Freedom offers a variety of different services to those that have been victimized by either sex or labor trafficking. And so in that dynamic, there's so much when complex traumas, there's so many needs and diverse needs of a trafficking survivor that we want to make sure that a victim doesn't have to retell their story. So we have housing, we have addiction assessors on staff, we have prevention, we also have case managers that work directly. We have a house called Marissa's House that houses right now 12 survivors and 13 children.
Wow.
And we're one of 2% in the nation that do that. And we've seen great success. And so really it's a holistic approach to serving all the needs of a survivor in their journey to becoming an overcomer.
What an incredible organization. You have to be so proud of yourself and all the people that work with you to have it grow to this. I mean, 2%. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's also sad that there aren't more services out there, and that's one of the problems. We need more services to help individuals that are being victimized. But for me, it's a journey. It is a privilege to work with survivors. They have taught me, and I believe our staff, so much about life and being grateful for things. That's amazing what we take for granted, and journeying life with them, and to see their tenacity to overcome has been a privilege.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'd love to learn more about your organization all the time. So I'm so happy that we're doing this interview, especially this month. Mary, let's get to you. Now, you are from Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls obviously is growing now, but you were trafficked over 30 years ago. And we tend to think people from Sioux Falls, we're safe, nothing ever bad is going to happen to us, but this stuff does happen here in our city. But it happened to you after you moved out of Sioux Falls. Can you share your journey with us? And like I said before, however much of your story that you are comfortable with, we would love to hear your trafficking journey.
I am happy to share some things I went through to bring that awareness and education, and to know that we're not alone and that survivors are not alone, and that what they went through, that we're here for them. So I would be considered the girl next door, and went to a local Christian high school here in Sioux Falls, graduated, ended up at Mount Marty College for a semester. I wanted to be a nun and an anesthesiologist. So
That's quite the combo.
that did not happen. I ended up moving to the East Coast to be a nanny. So that expectation of moving to the East Coast, outside the borders of South Dakota, there are reasons why I left the state, but I usually don't share too much of that. But there is a personal reason why I left. And when I was out there, it was a whole different world. I thought everybody was nice. I thought there's no mean people in the world, and everyone had good intentions, and that was not the case. I ended up meeting a man that would be eventually my husband, end up trafficking me for both sex and labor trafficking. So when I moved out, I went to the beach one night. I was in Connecticut, I met a man on the beach and a whole group of people. I also had a boyfriend at the time, and this boyfriend I did not understand, but he was kind of a playboy type. So I ended up being pregnant. And when I went to this boyfriend at the time and said, hey, you know, I'm pregnant, he said, well, you're going to end up having an abortion if you're going to stay with me. And I just couldn't do that. I called my family and I asked them and let them know that I was pregnant, and I have come to terms, even though my father has passed away, he did not want me to return home. And at that time, it wasn't very common for a lot of young women to return home, that it was always elsewhere, that you would give your child up for adoption. So I wasn't able to return home. So here's a group of new friends. I told them my situation, and they said, well, they don't care about you. Your boyfriend doesn't care about you. We'll take care of you. So that was a decision that I did make, was to go to the people that now are accepting me and that I belong into this new group of friends and family.
So that would be when the grooming process for all of this would have started.
Yeah, and we kind of like to use the word manipulation instead of grooming.
It is very manipulative.
Yeah.
It is manipulation to a T. Yes.
And so the new people now become your family, your friends, and you feel like you owe them because they took you out of this horrendous situation that you thought, I can't go home, I didn't have anywhere to go. But I didn't have even resources at that time to think I could get help, being a single mom, being pregnant. So I did end up going and being a part of this new group of friends.
Right. Right. And if you want to describe a little bit more of that process and where you ended up with that, that is up to you.
Yeah, when you look back at things that have happened to you, because you don't understand that you're being abused when you first start out. You don't understand that, like, if somebody hits you, because abuse is slow. So they'll hit you once and then say how very sorry they are. It'll never happen again, but that I shouldn't act that way. So now the blame is being put on myself, so that I'm like, so sorry I even acted that way, almost to the point where you deserve to be hit because it's your fault.
Yes.
And so that's that cycle of abuse where you have that reward and punishment. So you've done bad, but I'm going to reward you and buy you some new clothes and for, you know, whatever it may be. And then you stay thinking, oh, this person isn't really like that.
Right.
And then you start out very slow with that. Once that is in place about the abuse, it gets worse, but you're already in. You already feel like you needed to take that punishment. As time goes on, then other things come into play, and that would be when they start selling you. I wasn't on the street where I had to get a quota every day and go out. That wasn't the case. It was more how this man, he was actually from Colombia, South America. I didn't understand that world either. And that he was from Medellin, Colombia, and the people that he introduced me to and that I got lured into were a very dangerous cartel out of Colombia. And so as time went on, being sold for whether it's a drug deal gone good, drug deal gone bad, whether they're having a party and you're going to go with this drug dealer or you're going to go with this person. But that mindset and the wiring of your brain, you go and do it because you owe.
Well, and it's become the norm for you. So that was your life. That was the life that you're living every single day. And it's a comfort zone too, being, you know, that's what you're comfortable with because you've been doing that every day. And then you have somebody that maybe tells you that they love you. You have somebody to go home to every day, somebody that you feel like is keeping you safe.
Yeah, you
But
firmly
in turn,
believe.
they're really...
You just firmly believe that this man and these new friends love you, care about you, and you just don't know any other way of life.
Especially when you can't rely on your own family or certain members of your family to go back home to sweet little Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
And I understand when I look back. what my dad was saying. He was just saying it to protect the family and protect himself, and that's what women did at that time, is that they would leave and go have the baby and then come back.
So your journey did not end in Connecticut, though. You were actually brought to Columbia.
Correct.
How long were you there?
I look back, I try to think it was over a year. So we had moved from Miami. We were in Chicago for a while. We were in New York. I lived in there for a while also. I don't even know all the towns and cities that whatever activity was happening, whether it be sex or labor trafficking, drug dealing, arms dealing, I don't know. I just don't know all the places that I was at or where I ended up. But I did end up becoming pregnant by my husband. I do not give him his name. I don't give him that recognition at all. He was a horrific, horrible man.
Right.
And when I was pregnant, I even had a closer bond with him now, because now he was the father of my child.
Yeah.
And came a point in my life after I had my son that I wanted to leave. I look back and it's so crazy of everything that happens and what you go through, but you still can't process, nor do you understand. But you just know you want to bring your baby and go and leave and go home. So I tried to leave.
Well, and you went to specific places in Colombia where you thought that you could trust these people from the United States or from wherever that are seen internationally as trustworthy organizations, and they would not help you because they were so controlled by this cartel.
Yes, and I think when people look and try to understand it, I'm not here to really talk much about all of how that works, but I just know when you reach out for help, if somebody can't help you, they could tell me that I could go home, but I could not bring my child home because my child was born in Colombia. So the laws of the land. So that's really what the embassy had said to me, and that they could not help me and my son.
Well, you were eventually, we're not going to get into the whole story, but you were eventually, obviously, you're here with us today, break free of this. And what was it like? I mean, 30 years ago, human trafficking wasn't really a conversation. I mean, maybe it was, but especially around Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I would say.
It actually was put into federal statute early 2000.
Oh my.
And so it's very, very new within the circles of judicial systems, anti-human trafficking. And so it's really probably in the last several years that people are breaking the conversation. And I think what we have seen just doing our work is that a lot of the survivors are now self-identifying years later. And when Call to Freedom started, we started working with survivors as adults. We weren't serving youth. And what happened is we started to hear their journey, and they were victimized as kids. And nobody ever identified
Well,
them.
I saw on your website the average age of this starting victimization is 14, correct?
Yeah, and we feel like we're seeing it get younger and younger. So you have, demand, and you have traffickers, and it's a business. And so whatever that demand wants is what they get for that victim. So when you have sextortion, you have these pornography, the demand just seems to get more and more, it seems to be getting younger. And so whatever that fulfills that business deal, that trafficker is going to go out and get. So we are seeing from 11 to 14 is that average age.
Which is just so sad to think about. I mean, 14, you're just starting high school. 11, you're in, what, 6th grade?
And you don't have the emotional capacity, as you heard Mary's story, to understand what's happening to you. So that's what makes them prime victims or targets for this, is because it's hard to prove as a youth. A youth thinks you love them. They don't have that emotional capacity. There's lots of reasons. And also the demand sets that need for getting youth. And so it's scary, and it takes a lot of courage for survivors to break that silence. But that's what we've seen that have really brought individuals forward. And as they're self-identifying, right, and learning what this looks like, survivors sharing their story is one of the greatest gifts to those that are in this, because Mary brings a lot of hope to people.
Absolutely.
But I think it's important to also look at that buyer and the demand. I've been told many times by different people in my past that whatever the buyer wants, the buyer is going to get. So the trafficker looks for that, and the vulnerabilities in people, in youth, in anybody. All it takes is to have a conversation with somebody that you're going through something. It could be somebody you met on social media, could be through Facebook. I don't even know all the apps because mine did not go through any social media at the time.
Right, so think about how accessible it is today compared to then. I mean, that's scary.
Extremely.
That's very
And people
scary.
just will come in and friend you, and here's a youth thinking somebody cares about me, somebody likes me, I belong. I'm going through a lot, and the person understands and can go pretty quickly before they're starting to send nude pictures of themselves, whatever that is, and then they're forming something where the trafficker knows it, but the victim is thinking this person really cares and loves and about them, so that bond is already started with the victim.
And then there's
to
the initial meetup and gaining even more trust and feeling.
I think, too, as we talk a lot about girls and women, but boys are the latest target.
I was going to mention that it is not
Yeah,
just
it
girls.
There's not just
gender
it's just not
specific.
women.
So you did make it back to Sioux Falls. Obviously, you're here.
Yes, I'm here, thank goodness, and I'm grateful that I'm here
Yes.
every day.
You got your son back.
I did get my
incredible as
son
well.
back.
And now you're helping with Call to Freedom. So I want to get advice from the both of you. Like I said, this does happen here. Growing up, I didn't know what it was. I do now. Living all over the country and coming back to Sioux Falls, I still want to believe that it is just this, I mean, it obviously is very safe overall, but this tiny little community and safe and perfect and everything is sunshine and rainbows, but that's not the case. It happens here. Chances are, our viewers, you know somebody who has been trafficked and you have no idea, which is a scary thought.
Or even in the steps of being exploited, manipulated, and they're not quite understanding it.
Exactly. So what advice do you have for someone who is in the initial stages of being trafficked? If they do know it, if they have discovered that, or they're a current victim, they're currently in this, or for someone like a parent who is recognizing some signs like, oof, I don't know what's going on here. Is it this? What do you say to those people and how to approach these situations? What are their next steps?
So I think, first of all, education, because the victimization happens so differently. So a lot of times there's the mother who wrote the book that we're going to be releasing on Amazon for a parent guide specifically for this was the grandmother, the first survivor that walked through the doors of Call to Freedom. She followed me to 3 speaking events. She didn't understand what was happening to her granddaughter. She had actually been arrested, was part of a federal case. She was a victim in a federal case. They still didn't understand. They didn't know what to do. There's so much complex trauma. So what I would say is, number one, get educated. Attend one of our, at calltofreedom.org. You can go to one of our parent connection classes, and Mary's
Yes.
very involved in developing those 3 sessions that we have, and those are free to the community. You can do them over Zoom. Get educated on what it looks like, and then come alongside an anti-human trafficking group. We're here to support individuals because you're not going to understand what's happening, and sometimes it becomes very personal. And you want them to change, and you want that your son or your daughter or your niece or nephew to get it, but they're not receiving from you. And so sometimes having that outside perspective is something that helps you navigate that successfully. We work with families all the time, getting into counseling, and so seek professional help to be able to get advice on how to do that.
Yeah, and I think one really important, when I was connected with Call to Freedom, and I walked through the doors about 8 years ago,
Yeah, almost.
not knowing that we were connected by a mutual friend.
Yeah.
And I just walked in and I served. And I did whatever I could to help the women. And in that process, I was really connecting with them and understanding. And we got along, we talked the same language. There was just, and it started like, what is going on here? So I didn't identify that I was trafficked, use that word because the word wasn't used ever. Until I came to Call to Freedom. And I remember the day I called up Becky, I called up some other people here in Sioux Falls, and I said, do you know that I was trafficked? And they all said yes.
Yeah, they could just tell.
But I didn't know. Because sometimes you'll see that on the TV shows and it didn't look like what was on the TV shows or what was on social media or some myths that are out there of what trafficking looks like. I haven't yet met a survivor that I have mentored that did not know their trafficker. So
Relational.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's either through like a relationship that they've developed. There's a lot of different people who are traffickers and how they facilitate that. It could be a man, it could be a woman, it could be someone in the family, it could be friends that they've met or uncles of a friend that they've met. You just don't know.
Yeah. And so unpacking that is so many layers to that, not only for that victim, and it sometimes they don't even identify in it. And so helping the family navigate to get to that point is so important because it's very personal. And trauma not only happens to the person who's being victimized, it's also happening to the parents or the aunts and the uncles that are involved in it because they can't control something that seems so out of control. So having, those counselors involved and having some group like Call to Freedom involved with that is going to help in that success. And we field calls from Michigan, I've fielded calls from Florida, all over the United States.
It's not just here in Sioux Falls.
No,
and
they're
just an
seeking
interview
help.
with a show in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's just so much need to understand and get educated on this. So that is the first thing I would tell people: get educated, because education is key and is power. And also break the silence over this, because a lot of trafficking victims don't come forward because their traffickers have told them nobody's going to believe you. There aren't services for you, and control them. And so
Or the repercussions for coming forward. I mean, that is
absolutely,
scary.
yeah,
We're going to kill you.
absolutely.
We're going to kill your family.
So this is why this is so important, because it breaks the silence and it allows a survivor to go, they're talking about it, I can identify with that, like Mary was talking about, and it allows survivors to know that I can come forward and people do understand. And so thank you for having us, because this conversation is so important for those that are in the situation.
Absolutely. And not just in January. I mean, that's how this came up.
12 months out of the year.
Right. We, it came up, we were talking about Human Trafficking Awareness Month. That's why we wanted to do the interview, but that isn't the full reason why we wanted to do the interview too. I mean, this is such a scary topic, and thank gosh we and the world are talking about it more now.
I think it's good to know if somebody out there has been sexually exploited or under the control of someone for exchange of money by a third party, that would be considered human trafficking, to please know that you're not alone and to not be afraid. I know it's scary. I've been there. But also know to reach out, because you are loved and you're worth it. You're a human being. And we all matter.
And there is hope.
And there is hope.
Yeah. Mary represents that hope that most feel like they don't have.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to serve, and all of our services are free. So when people come to us, we find other funding sources. Our job is to make sure that they're not vulnerable and they're supported out of that process, and so that they can have every opportunity to be successful and to not only have hope, but become an overcomer. And maybe someday share their own story, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Right.
It's completely up to the person, if they're a share or they don't share, or whatever their journey is. It's a lifelong journey, unfortunately, but it doesn't mean we have to be defined by it.
Exactly.
It means that we can overcome it, and that we have to walk those new chapters. But thank goodness for agencies like Call to Freedom that walk alongside you, and they don't leave you. No matter if you leave them, the doors are still open.
Right.
They're always there.
We've been doing this show. I've been a television host for many years, and I don't know if I've ever cried. I think maybe I've cried on camera. I've gotten close, but you really had me close. Just want to stress that you do matter. Everybody matters that goes through this, whether you're being belittled or told that you don't matter. You do matter.
Yeah, and boys, as we said, sextortion online, we're seeing this increase with boys. Boys have a different, it's a victimization, but they have a different response. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt. We're seeing a lot of suicides attached with the sextortion. There is hope for you as a family. There is hope for you as if you were a young boy and somebody is making promises, blackmailing you for pictures. Call us. We'll help you out of that situation, and it isn't something that you have to live on your own.
Yeah. And just a reminder to parents, we talk about it a lot, but you need to monitor your kids' social media. Social media has obviously changed the world in many, many ways, but it is just the perfect way for traffickers to target their victims, and it is very scary. So just another reminder for parents.
And traffickers are very good at what they do.
Yes.
They've more than likely been doing it a while, and they want that person, and they're going to do by all the means that they can to get that person if that's what the demand is.
Now, before we go, you mentioned the book, the guide. It's coming out at the end of January, and is it just strictly on Amazon? How can people get it?
Yeah, you can go to calldofreedom.org, and when we launch it, that Amazon site will be on our website as well. So I think that's just the easiest way. It's a parent guide, and it's Call to Freedom, but actually Mary and a grandmother of one of our survivors wrote that book. And so it is a survivor-led, overcomer-led written
it
book.
was about 12 months where the grandmother and myself, I would give her my writings. We didn't know what it looked like at the time, but we showed each other. She showed me what a loved one goes through, and I showed her the mindset of a survivor. And it was just this beautiful collaboration. And with the support of Becky at Call to Freedom, this is what we came up with. And we're just super happy, and I'm so humbled by anybody that's involved with it. I'm just humbled and grateful all the time because I know what it looked like years ago. And I cry sometimes just knowing that I never, ever want a victim or someone out there to think that they don't care, that somebody doesn't care, and that you're not alone, and that there's services available, and we are here for you. And Call to Freedom is always open. Their doors are always open. So I am so grateful that I never want a victim to have to spend as many years as I did and not receive any help.
There are resources. Just to know that there are resources.
There are.
Yeah, and this book allows parents to understand what's happening. It's educational, but it also walks them through the victimization and helps them with ways to deal with that victimization. So it'll be a very minimal charge. We're still kind of working out those details, but we're not going to make any money off it. Our goal is to get this into as many hands as possible, so we are countering this and preventing it or assisting those that are in the midst of it.
I think it'd be great for any parent.
Yes.
Any parent, and I think just people in the community that want to understand or maybe learn and get educated on it from the mindset of a loved one and also a survivor.
Right. Well, first, Mary, thank you for sharing your story. I bet 30 years ago you never would have imagined that you would have the courage to come out and do this, but you are helping save people, save lives, and educate. And it's different. You know, we can all talk about it ourselves, but until you've actually had that experience, it's hard to talk about it, if that makes any sense.
And I think it's
You just
important to
bring a
listen.
different perspective
Yeah, thank you.
to so people can really try to understand. We'll never understand until we go through it, which obviously, hopefully, we don't. But unless you've gone through it, you don't understand. So for you to share your story and to mentor others and commit to this for life, instead of wallowing in it, you became strong and you are out there to help others. And I mean, you should be very, very proud of yourself. And I'm just met you, and I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I know I tell anyone who feels like if they're victimized or they've been sexually exploited, trafficked, I just let them know that never give the power back to that trafficker, no matter what that trauma bond is, and that we can take those next steps and we can take and move on with new chapters. It's not easy, but they are worth it, and I am worth it, and I know that now.
Yes.
And I belong.
Yes,
Which
you
took
do.
me a while to get that.
And Becky, I first met you when I was on the radio.
Yeah.
And you came to talk about Call of Freedom, and it had just started. And to see you, I mean, I've lived in other cities and come back, and to see how this organization has grown is absolutely incredible. So congratulations on all of your success and all the people that you're helping.
Yeah, we have a great staff. There is 27 of us that are hands on the ground, very passionate about this. And it takes a team and also a great community. So, and the grace of God in this whole process, because we'll be there if people need us. So.
And we do have a great community, and people are very good at giving back here. So let's talk about that briefly before we go. How can people help Call to Freedom, whether that's through volunteering, maybe being a mentor if that's an option, donating, getting involved with events? How can they help?
Yeah, well, you covered all of them. You did
there
great.
you go.
Yeah, Call to Freedom, calltofreedom.org has all those opportunities. And so we started with volunteers. Volunteers will always be the backbone of our organization. And when I started this, the Lord said, unite a community. And I didn't know what that was, but I'm watching him do it. And so we've found positions or places where people can serve to be a part of this fight. And this isn't just a Call to Freedom fight, this is a community fight. So we have volunteer opportunities on calltofreedom.org. And if you want to financially give, we also, we want to expand this work. We want to offer more housing. We want to be able to get into more communities and provide more resources, and so you can give financially as well. And if you are a church community, we welcome prayer. We know that this is a very difficult
Power prayer.
Yeah, it's a very difficult dynamic, and there's lots of moving parts, and so there's a lot of different great ways to get involved.
Well, I'm so happy that I met you, Becky, 8 years ago, and Mary, today, you were such an inspiration.
Oh, thank
and not just for traffickers, especially or trafficking victims, survivors, but to anybody who's facing adversity or problems, that you do not have to give up. You can be strong and you can overcome this. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be very difficult. But with help and organizations like Call to Freedom, you can do it. So
Thank you.
thank you guys. We appreciate you
thank
being
you so
here.
much for having us.
And thanks for watching another What's Up Sioux Falls. And again, please reach out to Call to Freedom, whether you know somebody who might be trafficked, whether you are being trafficked, a survivor, or you just want to help or know more. We'll see you next week.